How to make arm beads for your puppet.
To the puppet nerds of the world, this may sound absurd, but this is the place you need to be. We'll do an interview and then we'll stitch and glue all of the dolls, we'll make it shake. If you wanna be in the know and to play like a pro, subscribe to Krutinger Puppets.
Adam Krutinger here, and today I'm going to show you how to make arm beads for your puppet. Now this is a topic I get comments about all the time. A couple years ago, Adam Savage posted a video on his YouTube channel, Tested, about how to make a puppet. In that video, they visited the workshop of Rick Lyon. Now Rick Lyon has a long resume of mainstream puppetry projects that he's worked on, but he's most known for his work on Avenue Q. Not only was he a performer in the show, he was also the main designer and builder for all the puppets. But this behind the scenes look that Adam Savage gave of Rick Lyon's studio, everyone got to see a bunch of really cool little tips and tricks that he uses to make his puppets. And by far the most popular one that I get comments on all the time are the arm beads in his puppet's arms. I'm not exactly sure where this technique started, but I know there's a handful of puppeteers that use it. And people ask me all the time why I don't use it. And the truth is, I do use it every once in a while. There's not one way on how to make a puppet. There's a whole bunch of different ways, and different techniques work better for different situations. For example, in that video, Rick Lyon shows how the arm beads give a nice weight to the arms and lets gravity really pull down on them in a nice natural way. You can see right here that these arm beads have a nice little droop in them that you might not quite get with foam. And now depending on your project, there may be reasons why you do or do not want that. Another thing is, this is a technique I would only really recommend for a fur covered character. If you did an arm like this using fleece, there's a good chance that all these bumps would show up in the arm and it wouldn't look very flattering. But the texture of the fur can hide all of that. But anyway, let's get started. The biggest size I would recommend is a 1-inch bead. Once you get bigger than that, you're adding a lot of weight to your puppet that you might not want. These have a hole that goes completely through it. And the next thing you're gonna need is some string. This is one I found on Amazon that works perfect with the beads I recommend. Now the purpose of this video is mostly just to show how to make the arm beads and how to attach them. I've already done videos on how to make puppet arms, so make sure to click the link right here or the links down in the description to figure out how to do that as well. So here's a puppet arm that I built. The fingers for this one are going to be attached separately, so I'll worry about that later. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut a long piece of this string. I like to make it much longer than I actually need it. And I also like to put some tape on it. That will keep this string from unraveling, and it'll make it much easier to thread our beads. Next, let's decide about how many beads we need. I'm just gonna lay some out here to get a rough idea. And if I need to add one, I can just add one if I need it. I think about 7 is gonna be good for this project. First thing I do is I take my tape covered string and I just feed it straight through the string like this. I like to knot one side, but I like to leave a long tail. That'll give me a little bit more flexibility later, just like that. Now, after you have that first bead attached, I like to make another knot. This keeps the bead from sliding around. Now I like to keep it close, but not so close that there's no movement at all. I like to keep just a little bit of room for this thing to slide back and forth. Maybe like 1/4 of an inch or less, maybe 1/8 of an inch. And I'm gonna repeat this process. Now already you can see that this has a nice natural movement to it. Now one thing a lot of people ask me is whether or not we even need those knots there. I have some friends in puppetry that prefer not to put the knots there. I did try it both ways, but the only time that I did it where I didn't put the knots, the balls kind of got like bound up inside the arm. Just notice how these knots allow this to be super flexible. In contrast, if we put all the balls together like this, they're much more rigid and they can't flex as much. So if that's the kind of effect you're looking for, then maybe that is something that you want to do. And you might say just give it some more room like this so that they can kind of free flow. Maybe if you use a thinner string that could work out, but also once it's inside the sleeve, that also restricts a lot of the movement too. So what tends to happen if you don't put the knots in there is it can kind of create an unnatural elbow in places where you might not want it. So imagine if all the balls are separated like this, then you have kind of an elbow there. But what if it accidentally separated like this? Then that elbow spot keeps changing. But again, if you put those little knots in loosely, then it's always going to be at a consistent space away from each other. Again, this is just the technique I would recommend the most. It's worked out really well for me. Now that's about it on how to make these arm beads. Next, I'm going to show you how to put them into your puppet. The next thing you're going to attach this to is the hand of the puppet. Now this is an arm rod I already made. You can click right here for a video on how to make arm rods, and also the armature for inside the fingers so that they're posable and can bend. And I'll have a video to that in the description as well. But the first thing I'm going to do is tie this to my hand here. You can see with the technique that I use, I often have a little loop here, but if you don't have a little loop, you could just tie it around the hand. So if you don't have that little loop, you could just tie it in a knot really tightly like that around the hand. But I'm gonna go through that loop in the arm rod, and then I'm going to tie it off. I'll add a little bit of glue so this knot doesn't come off here. Now already you can tell that that's working out really nicely. Now that this is pretty much done, I'm going to cover the hand with foam and fur like we did in the other videos. Now you might be wondering why I have such a small fleece hand on this. For the design of this character that I'm making, I want the fingers to be fleece and the rest of the hand and arm to be fur. Now there's a couple of different ways to do that. I could have just individually stitched the fingers to the fur, but for this design I do want the base of the hand right above the knuckles to be showing as well. So this is just another fun little technique that I do. Now let's attach the rest of the arm. This is why I still left such a long tail on this. It just makes it a little easier for threading this through the entire arm. So now that it's through, I can just pull on this string and it'll all feed right into it. See that nice movement, that nice weight on the hand. Now I'm just going to finish stitching it up. So the next thing I want to do is take this top knot that's here and stitch it to the inside of the fur arm. Then you can snip this off. And then I'm going to stitch the top of the arm closed. And just like that, they're all finished. Just to get a good look at how they work, I'm going to attach them to this little puppet. I just want a temporary bond, so I'm just going to pin them on. Just like that, our arms are attached. We get really nice movement out of it, and they hang really nicely. Yeah, I like it too. Yeah, I thought you would. So if you enjoyed this build and you want to learn how to make professional puppets, make sure to subscribe. I make weekly tutorial videos on how to make puppets, how to be a puppeteer, and we also do lots of interviews on our podcast, Puppeteers. And be sure to check out my website in the link down below. I have a ton of free resources for people who want to learn puppetry. It's a great place to get started. Anyway, that's it for now. See you next time.